Good morning, everyone. Joe Scarice, welcome to the Creative Birth Strategy podcast and house here every Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, to provide education, networking, and strategy. So, here I just want to get some things started here in just a few minutes. I have a very exciting discussion today and a big announcement this morning. So we have a lot of things going on. So we'll get ourselves set up here over the next couple of minutes. But I think it'll be quite exciting this discussion today. Um, Having a special guest that I was introduced by Linda Pelagas at Realty 4 and 1. So I just want to get things started here. I want to welcome everybody. We're here Sunday morning, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. My name is Joe Scarice, co-founder and co-host of the Creative Birth Strategies House and podcast. And all our downloads and podcasts are on our website, creativebirdstrategies.com, or you can go to josephvscarice.com for all our events and opportunities with the podcast as well. I want to thank our sponsors this morning. I want to thank Mr. Yardell Perkins of Perkatech, who is our social media backbone and co-founder to the podcast, as well as all my website design and all the white label marketing. I want to thank MB Capital Solutions, where I'm a referral partner offering unsecured business lines of credit for for real estate professionals throughout the country. And I'd like to thank Real Estate Mastermind Strategies, where I offer networking events throughout the country. We have a bunch of them coming up this week alone. Very excited about that. We are in like five or six states, but a very big announcement. Landmark operations have ceased, and I will be moving my operations to a new facility platform offering white label referral partnership and direct to investor as of Monday. I really can't disclose where I'm moving to, but it's a very big move. I'll be a regional director. This happened Tuesday at 5 o'clock. I was the only profitable lender at the company at the time, so I assumed that's why they shut down the operations. Nobody else was kind of pulling their weight. So, very interesting week. A lot of transition, but all good. Very excited about the new move. It was immediately offered to me the same day that operation ceased at Landmark. So, pretty interesting week. Kept everything pretty calm about things. Still very busy with the DSCR and fix to rent, fix to flip, but not. I don't want to call it an emotional roller coaster, but it was definitely something to just handle accordingly, like a true professional. And I think a lot of my personal development training came into play here with the transition. But you just check everything out on my LinkedIn, my Facebook, my Instagram, TikTok. All the announcements will be made, I think, hopefully by 1 o'clock tomorrow. Just making sure all the T's are crossed and I's are dotted on all the paperwork. So, and today's discussion just came together over the last week, which I was excited about, and we put it together for this morning. But let's give you some updated news to the mortgage world. Rates dropped yet again, another quarter point. So rates are around starting at 5.25 on the commercial lending space. On the bridge money, it has stayed pretty steady at 8.99. And conventional financing, the 30-year fix for the homeowner starts at around 6.34. So with job reports being non-existent right now because of the government shutdown, there's still a lot of moving parts of what's going on in our market. But it's definitely an investor play this fall. I don't foresee home buying rebounding anytime really that soon. I think maybe we'll see some activity probably post March once we see Powell potentially being removed by the Trump administration. And it'll be interesting. I have some thoughts to who I think will be the replacement, but I want to say that I don't want to give my opinion on here. I've had discussions with people personally where I think things are going to go in regards to the Fed. I think it'll be a good move, but I personally think some of my peers that I work with, we have our personal opinion who he will place in there. I think we're all kind of thinking it's definitely going to be somebody close to the family, but I think it'll be interesting to watch how that turns out, because I think that's going to be the pivot in the rates and the values of homes and home buying rebounding in a late spring market. Because the spring market really starts the day after the Super Bowl, so the timing of the expiration of Powell's contract and um, the timing of all that might work out okay for home buyers. We'll definitely yet to see. Um, some articles that caught my eye this past week. Just want to quickly go over there so we can get to our speaker today, and I'm going to be interviewing him. Then we'll open it up to our moderators, of course. The real estate professionals still have an optimistic thought to the mortgage landscape. Client growth, competition. They feel like there's career longevity. They feel like AI is going to take them to the next step. Um, there's a lot of positive thought patterns with the resetting of a lot of the agents that have left and are now focusing on going into quarter four into quarter one. There's a lot of actually positive notions and mindset of what they need to do to stay abreast and present in the industry. So that was an interesting article, which I will post as well today. And then another article that caught my eye was rent concessions. What are rent concessions that tenants really want, right? And some key takeaways. Um, Everybody's looking for the first month free rent is free, waived security deposit, waived pet fee, upgraded appliances, and waived application fee. So very interesting. Let's go with that again. First month rent is free, waived security deposit, waived pet fees, upgraded appliances, and waived applications. So that was some of the bells and whistles that I've seen that has become appealing for tenants to, look at new opportunities to rent. So that was another article that caught my eye. So today's discussion came together from Miss Linda Pelagas, who is a colleague and longtime associate of mine through Realty 411. She made an introduction. I said, "Hey, Linda, I need to get somebody unique here on the podcast." And by the way, the previous weekend, that podcast hit over 5,000 views on the podcast. It did equate into hundreds of downloads. Still rolling out there. So I really appreciate Clubhouse and everything that Yardell is doing with Spotify and all the other social media buckets he places loads up the podcast to through Buzzsprout. It's getting a lot of gravity, and but this interview really caught my eye because I went to a PadSplit backflip dinner function the previous week, and there's a lot of excitement in this space. And as a lender, I have to recognize all these newer acronym concepts. The concept's been around, but it has this new flair of PadSplit, and I thought the discussion was pretty solid. I tried to punch holes through a lot of the questions to the speakers, and they handled them very well. And I think I'm comfortable with the discussion on PadSplit. And previously, I was introduced to Devin McGuire, who's out of Southern California, so he's up a little early. He's the market manager for PadSplit, the nation's largest rent by the room platform, bringing over 12 years of real estate experience to the forefront of the co-living movement. He has helped countless investors get multifamily level returns from single family assets that often double or triple cash flow while tackling the affordable housing shortage. So Devin's regularly speaking at investor groups across the region, sharing proven strategies that boost returns, reduce vacancy, and open new paths for portfolio growth. His passion lies in bridging profitability with impact and helping investors increase NOI while solving real estate housing challenges. Devin, good morning. Are you able to unmic this morning?
Good morning. Yes, can you hear me?
Yes. You look great for 6 o'clock in the morning out in California.
Oh yeah. I'm usually up pretty early, but my voice might be a little different than usually when I'm at full working hours. But happy to be here. Thanks for having me.
Devin, thanks for coming on. We moved on this pretty quick when we confirmed the discussion, so I appreciate that. So, what did I leave out that maybe that we want to know why you're so passionate about PadSplit? The kind of like your overview is pretty solid in what you do and how you present yourself out in the West Coast region. What's your thoughts to PadSplit and you and your passion to it, and where do you see it going quarter one? The end of quarter four, going into quarter one. Where do you see PadSplit for yourself and for your client base?
Yeah, so right now is a really exciting time over here at PadSplit. We are the nation's largest co-living platform, and we started back in 2018 in Atlanta, Georgia, and we're really scaling pretty quickly. We're adding about 1,600 rooms to our platform every single month right now. Granted, the summer months tend to be a little bit busier, right? People make a lot of transitions with their properties and things like that. But going into the end of the quarter, we're probably going to continue that growth. Where we just, I think, as of a day or two ago, crossed 26,000 rooms on the platform, and we're looking to hopefully get to 30,000 rooms on the platform by the end of this year, and looking to double that to 60,000 by the end of 2026. But I will say that what is amazing about working for a company like PadSplit and doing this is at the end of the day, like I've been in the real estate industry for a long time, as Joe said, and I'm a real estate broker in California. I've worked for title insurance companies. I was a loan officer for a small period of time. I've been in the industry a long time, and I've worked a lot. I've worn a lot of hats in the industry, and this is one of the first times where you really do get to see the impact of the mission and the company's values and things. Because not only do you help investors make extra money, which obviously is important, and it's always great to help investors solve their challenges, but it's a two-sided coin. You get to help investors make more money, and you get to help tenants find more access to affordable housing. We have a panel where we get to talk all the reviews from the tenants, and every day we get new reviews that are so amazing to read that everyone's, all the tenants in there saying, so happy I found this. This is a godsend, things like that. And that's really what drives the impact. I get texts from hosts that tell me, you solved this problem that I've had for months and years, or, and then to see those reviews from tenants as well. Both those things really just make this the incredible spot to be. Like I said, we are experiencing a super amount of growth, but then also to just see the impact every day in doing the job. That's what makes it amazing for sure.
Devin, we put a couple questions together, and then we're gonna open it up to the moderators to obviously have question or so for you as well, or statements toward the discussion of PadSplit. For investors who may not be familiar with, what exactly is PadSplit, and how does it differ from the traditional rentals or short-term models for like Airbnb? And listen, getting away from the term boarding house. That's really like the boarding room mentality, because I actually owned a boarding room, a home at one time. So what separates all that right now with PadSplit and their concept?
Yeah, so at the end of the day, when I try to give like a 60-second breakdown of what PadSplit is, right? What we are is we're an online marketplace. So, co-living in general as an investment strategy and as a rental strategy has existed probably since the beginning of time, right? It's just renting out a property room. And where it differs from, I think, previous attempts is, we don't have the individual tenants sign leases and things like that. They sign a membership agreement with us, and then, the hosts sign an agreement with us. And so by placing the tenants in as members, it usually kind of changes the structure from like a boarding house to almost like a corporate housing structure where they have access to housing at different locations. But with with also some stability more so compared to like a short-term model. When our members come on board, they do commit to 31 days in a specific property, which helps alleviate in a lot of markets. There's short-term rental regulations that have 30-night minimums and things like that. So our model is definitely not short-term rental. And then they do commit to that 31 days in the property and 12 weeks on our platform. So, and then on top of that, our average stay currently is around 8.5 months for our members, which are the tenants. I always like to throw the vocabulary out there. Our asset owners, property owners, they're the hosts, and then the tenants themselves are the members. But yeah, so compared to like a short-term model like Airbnb, right? It's more consistent. There's less turnover. I have worked with a lot of hosts that switch over from an Airbnb model, and right now, there's just so much hostility towards the short-term rental market because the cities and municipalities have rules against, the short-term models. And then on top of that, there's licensing, permitting, oversaturation, right? And this model is providing more access to housing for local people, local workforce housing. So that's where a lot of municipalities are kind of pro PadSplit, pro co-living. And yeah, so that's where it's a little bit different now compared to like a long-term rental. Usually the biggest change is you're going to see a reduced vacancy risk because instead of say you have a 4-bedroom property that goes vacant at the end of a 2-year lease, takes you 2 months to fill up. The revenue is all or nothing when it comes to that property. Versus on a 4-bedroom, our model kind of recommends converting that 4-bedroom into maybe a 5 or a 6-bedroom, depending on how much extra space you have. It's not required to be on the platform, but we do encourage converting like a living room or a den or a closed-in office into an extra bedroom, just to help increase that cash flow and scale up the revenue. And so when you go from like a 4-bedroom house to a 6-bedroom house, for an example, if one tenant leaves, one member leaves, you still have 5 other members paying you, giving you those rents. So it's definitely reduced vacancy loss and higher cash flow compared to a long-term rental.
So that ties into my next question. Double their income with the same property. What comes to light when I say that statement to you?
Yeah, so the classic example I like to say, and so now granted, I'm based out of California, right? So the numbers I use in this example are a little bit different than you might see in a city, somewhere else. But at the end of the day, the math, the percentages still apply, right? And so part of my role at PadSplit is I help people onboard properties anywhere in the country, pretty much anywhere in our core markets. But here's my classic example. I say, right? So say you're able to rent like a $4,000 4-bedroom house for $4,000 a month. That's a reasonable rent out here in Southern California. Probably actually on the low end now, but $4,000 a month for a 4-bedroom house, right? So essentially, when you're renting out long term, you're receiving about $1,000 per month per bedroom in that model. Now, what we find is that when, if you were to add a bedroom to that property or two, that income isn't able to scale linearly. So it's not like you add another bedroom to that property and try to rent it out long term, and now you'll get 5,000, right? You might get 4,500, or you might get 4,700. You add another bedroom, now you're at 5,000, 5,200, right? You're not at $6,000 a month. However, with PadSplit, out here in Southern California specifically, we're averaging about $1,200 a month for a room, and so even at that 4-bedroom count, you're looking at around 4,800 in gross revenue. Now, if you're able to add that 5th bedroom, now you're at $6,000 a month. If you're able to add that 6th bedroom, now you're at $7,200 a month, right? And so that's where the cash flow scales up pretty quickly, especially if you're able to get to that 5, 6, 7 bedrooms potentially. And one of the common pushbacks we hear is, well, don't you need a living room? Don't you need these common areas? And what we find is that too much common area actually creates social problems, amongst the different people living in the rooms. Our CEO, Atticus, he has a great saying where he says, nothing good happens on couches, right? So, people hog up the couch with the TV, right? They'll watch the football game for 2 hours. Everybody else wants to watch a movie or something like that. It just creates issues. I mean, I used to live in a roommate situation back in college, and the living room was always the place where the social tension happened. So we recommend just getting rid of that. Especially if it's easy to throw up a wall, put in an extra bedroom, that's gonna help with that. Not only increase the cash flow, but also alleviate that social tension. I mean, we still recommend having like a dining room table if you can put it somewhere, so that way people aren't, not encouraged to eat in their room, and that is more of a community builder than a couch. And also with common areas, we see people use it as storage and things like that, and have their buddies sleep over on the couch, right? Things like that. Doing those things, it helps to alleviate some of the headaches of co-living, as well as increase the cash flow.
So we got a couple more questions before we go to the moderators, of course. So and they're not as scripted as us because they weren't prepared for there. Nobody's prepared about the discussion before up to the minute before we post. So it's going to be very natural to questions. So what type of properties or markets perform best for PadSplit platform, and where's the sweet spot for investors that what they should be looking for?
Yeah, especially if it's your first time operating a co-living operation. What my suggestion is, as far as properties, is I usually suggest 5 to 7 rooms. That's usually going to be the sweet spot. The model tends to break even real tight numbers wise at 3 rooms. I've had people say, "Hey, can I do this with my 2 bedroom condo or something like that?" And I say, yeah, I mean, at the end of the day, like, if you are struggling to fill that condo, we can help you out. But like, I wouldn't go acquire a 2 bedroom property to turn it into a co-living operation. So really that 5 to 7 is where you see the economies of scale really work well. Because when you get to 8 plus, there's just some other logistical issues that you need to manage, right? You might have to have a second refrigerator at 8 rooms, 9 rooms, 10 rooms, right? A property might not be able to support that. Our model, we do require, or our max ratio for bedrooms to bathrooms is 4 to 1. However, we do recommend 3 to 1 bedrooms to bathroom ratio. So, once you start getting to 9, 10 rooms in a property, unless the property has like 4 or 5 bathrooms, you might not be able to get up to that scale without adding a bathroom. And a first-time investor in a co-living property, you might not have plan that within your acquisition, or maybe you're not comfortable adding bathrooms, right? A lot of our initial investors are looking for lower rehab costs, and I'm sure a lot of investors know adding bathrooms tends to really increase the rehab costs. So as far as that's property types, and there's a lot of nuance that comes into it. I have a copy of a buy box that has general recommendations for what to look for when it comes to a type of property, but usually, you want to shoot for about 4 bedrooms plus. 3 works if you can add those extra bedrooms, like I said, and then 2,000 square feet. Because when you start searching in those ranges, 2,000 plus square feet, that usually gives you access to extra space that you can convert. And then as far as markets, right now, some of our best markets, Charlotte, North Carolina is a great market. Almost anywhere in Florida is doing really well. Texas is doing really well. Philadelphia is doing really well. Even out here in Southern California, we're filling these rooms at incredibly high rates. Obviously, the acquisition cost is higher as well, but pretty much a lot of our markets that we are in, our core markets especially, we did a lot of research before we jumped into them, so we know that these perform well. There's a huge demand for housing, but at the end of the day, where it's really going to make sense is if the numbers make sense, right? So that's kind of what my job is I help people, not only identify these properties, run some basic numbers, see what they could potentially look like with all the data that we have, and then help advise on that going forward.
I mean, what I hear from this is I feel like it's not just a profit center. It's tackling a serious affordable housing crisis. How do you see this model balancing financial returns with social impact? I mean, I know it'll be more the major cities will welcome it, I think, a little more. Maybe not. It all depends on the neighborhoods, I would think. What's your thoughts to that question?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when you're talking, so I work predominantly on the host side, right? So the investor side. I do a lot of meetups in Southern California. We do a lot of events, conferences, stuff like that. And I have an event on Tuesday, and I had someone come up that found us on the platform Meetup, and he's like, hey, I was actually looking to move into one of these rooms. And, unfortunately, I don't work on that side of the business. We have a whole other side of the business that works on the member acquisition and things like that. But I referred them to the website and stuff. But at the end of the day, like the social impact is super important. That's like I mentioned, we are the two-sided marketplace, right? Helping the investors make more money, but also helping tenants find access to affordable housing. And it always amazes me how these people are so grateful to move into these rooms, even at the rates that they're paying. And like I always tell people, I've been a little removed from the rental market myself for a while now, right? And this is common for a lot of investors that I speak with, and they kind of have a hard time putting themselves in the shoes of who's renting these rooms, because most investors have money, they own their house, or they might have a family, right? So for our model is singles only in these rooms. Predominantly, we do allow some hosts to allow for double occupancy, but most families can't really move into these rooms. So it's going to be single people that are working people, but when you start seeing the impact driven through these people that are moving into them, and they're even in Southern California paying $1,200 a room, you're like, wow, that's so much. Who would do that? But when you compare it to what a studio or one bedroom apartment costs, $2,000, $2,500 a month out here, they're so happy to be able to pay five, six, seven, $800 less than what the next comparable option would be. And at the end of the day, sometimes it is a little bit of a sacrifice for them, but a lot of them don't have a choice, and that's where giving them a choice, not forcing them into a studio, is where we have that impact, and it is amazing to see. And like I said, to call back to those reviews that we see, I mean, I saw two this morning that came in where they were like, we're so happy to have found this. This is gonna, help me save to buy a house. There's all these stories from all these members that we have that, it's not always just, hey, I am looking to save money so I can just keep squallering away, right? No, it's a lot of times it's like, hey, I want to be able to save to buy a house. I want to start a business. I want to do such and such. These people have goals, and that's kind of what our company is really driven by, is to help people find financial empowerment through housing.
Yeah, I feel that. I mean, my final question before we go to the moderators with their question or statement toward you in regards to PadSplit, our interview with Devin this morning. Really excited about this discussion. And I saw the excitement at the Philadelphia event. Looking ahead, where do you see the shared housing and co-living space heading in the next few years? And how is PadSplit positioning itself for the future?
Yeah, I mean, I do see us growing. I mean, we are kind of going viral right now in the investor community, and I do see that our growth is going to continue, at least for the next few years. So we started in Atlanta, right? And like I mentioned earlier in the call, we have 26,000 rooms on the platform. And in Atlanta, where we started, we have just about 8,200 rooms on our platform. And people sometimes say, like, well, are you going to hit a saturation point like Airbnb, right? Now, we also track demand numbers in the markets that we're in our core markets. And so we get about 40,000 searches a month for rooms for rent just on our website alone in the Atlanta market. And we only have 8,200 units. Right. So it shows you that there's a huge amount of people searching for these rooms, and we only have 8,200 rooms. So definitely, I think we're very far away from a saturation point. Will this be the full solution to the housing problem that we have in the United States? I don't think so, right? There's families out there that need solutions, and maybe that's something that we look to in the future. I just don't. I see that there is still a lot of demand, at least for single rooms, and I think the growth is going to continue to be explosive, at least in the next few years. The way we're positioning ourselves is we are constantly expanding. We're going into new markets. We just launched in Portland. We're still not live in New York, which I think there's a lot of opportunity there. So really, I think over the next 2 to 3 years, where our our vision is to continue to expand into a lot of the major metros like Chicago, Cleveland, more and more markets, grow that supply, and then continue to fill those rooms with the demand that we see, and bring those two together, the investors and the members.
Devin, thank you for these questions and answers to get the room started. We have a great interview today here with Devin Adwire from PadSplit, and pretty excited about that. And if anybody can invite other people into the room, that would be always appreciated. We're going to start with ladies first, of course, with a brief introduction, who they are, and then a question or statement to Devin, so we can keep this extremely interactive. And we'll get through all the moderators, of course, and then we'll see where this finishes up. Good morning, Amy. Welcome. Brief overview of who you are, what you do, and then questions for Devin in regards to PadSplit.
Good morning, Joe. Good morning, everyone. I am Amy Palvido. I am the chairwoman of the U.S. PropTech Council, a longtime real estate investor, and a co-founder of Facilimax, which is a PropTech company. And Devin, I met Atticus in 2021 at the MFE conference in Vail. And yeah, no, good guy. And I looked, he was telling us about the mission then, and I really kind of resonated with it then. So it's awesome. And it's so good to see a company kind of succeed in this mission. Y'all sticking around for as long as you have. It's a really cool thing for sure. And to see the growth, and that's awesome. It's really awesome. Okay, so my question to you is: so from an investor standpoint, because most of the folks in the room are here, what for if someone was to buy a 5-bedroom home, what is the break even occupancy for that? Like if they were going to use a PadSplit model, do a co-living thing, is it 3 rooms they need to rent? Is it 2? What are you seeing from that perspective, so people can kind of gauge for them if they want to choose to do co-living?
Yeah, so I always like to be super transparent with the hosts that I talk with, and at the end of the day, if you need to, it really just depends on the individual investor's goals, right? Mm-hmm. If you have an existing 3-bedroom property and it's not filling for whatever reason or something like that, and you're struggling to get it filled, we can definitely work with you, but you will probably not cash flow, right? It's going to be tough to make the numbers work unless you have like a super low debt service or something like that. Now, 4 bedrooms plus is really where you start to see the numbers make sense, I would say. But when it comes from an acquisition point, right, like you can buy a 3-bedroom property that you can add 2, 3, 4 potentially bedrooms depending on the location, and it makes sense. So it really is. There's a lot of nuance to it, I would say, and it really depends on the market. Like for instance, in Southern California, we have some investors who have 3-bedroom properties who've listed them on the platform, and for them the numbers make sense because maybe they bought them 5, 6, 7 years ago, right? In today's Southern California market, if you were to buy a 3-bedroom property and try to list it with 3 bedrooms alone, you'd probably be negative cash flow for sure. Mm-hmm. But when you start to get to the 5, 6, 7 bedrooms, you do start to see some really positive numbers. And I actually do a lot of case studies for a lot of the presentations I do out here. I do a monthly webinar, virtual webinar where I'll find properties that are on the MLS, show how the numbers can work. And usually the way I look at it is I just look at our buy box and I say, okay, 4 bedrooms plus on Zillow with 2,000 square feet plus, and I can make the numbers work in Southern California pretty easily, especially if I can find something with like at least 2-bedroom ads. That's really where the numbers are going to do really well. But I mean, I found properties that get you to 7, 8 bedrooms. And like I said, you just have to really watch that bathroom ratio, because if the property is a 3-bedroom, 2-bath, and you're trying to add 4 bedrooms to it, you're going to be over, like right at that ratio or slightly over it. So you just got to be careful. Because a lot of properties have like a master bathroom, so that's 1 bathroom locked into that 1 bedroom, and so then in that example of a 3 and 2, you had 4 bedrooms to it, say, and so you're at 7, you have 6 bedrooms sharing 1 bathroom. That's just not going to work, right? So you're going to have to add a bathroom now, and out here that might be $60,000. You know what I mean? So you just have to keep that in mind.
So when you're talking to investors, I mean, what kind of, and this might be for Joe too, if the plan is to do co-living, what kind of financing are they able to get? Like it isn't that isn't the lender going to care? And does it change from a, say you bought a 4-bedroom house and you want to change it to a co-living model? Are you running up against some regulatory things, and from especially from the financing side? How does an investor make it work?
Well, can I jump in there, Devin?
Yeah.
Yeah. So, Amy, there's ways to work around the co-living model with financing in the asset-based lending non-QM. It is definitely case by case, and it's a strategy discussion with the client that's doing it. But I have closed and completed refinances as well as bridge fixed to rents with that model in place. But it's a deeper discussion with the client. The client's usually a little more proficient and a little more connected to the project, where they want to have that communication with their lender. I'll leave it right there. So, Devin, anything you would like to add?
Yeah, so I mean, we like I mentioned, we have about 26,000 rooms on the platform. I believe we have just shy of about 2,000 individual hosts on the platform currently. Because some hosts have larger portfolios, some hosts just own one asset on the platform. But I think 2-3 years ago, the financing was definitely a little bit more of a struggle. I think it's gotten a lot easier. Lenders are opening up their products to kind of to work with this a little bit better. And really, what we've seen is, a lot of investors will come into it with like a hard money loan or private money to purchase the asset, and then when they're done rehabbing it, they'll refinance out of that loan, and that refinance is usually where the struggle is. What we've seen. So the struggle can be, hey, I turned this 4-bedroom property into a 7-bedroom property, and now there's no comps for an appraisal or anything like that. And what we've seen is a lot of, the advice is usually is either don't add closets to the rooms, so that way they can be considered like closed in living rooms or offices, right? Or don't add the closets until after the refi, right? So then you can still make a DSCR loan work, but you just have to keep that in consideration when you're looking to your refinance strategy. Is, can I make the DSCR numbers work on traditional rents? And then you might not be able to get as high of value as you necessarily wanted, but you are still able to do something, and then you can add the closets after, things like that. That's kind of some of the strategies that we've seen, but definitely happy to kind of elaborate on that and connect. I'm sure Joe has some creative solutions, like you mentioned.
Yeah.
There's lots of lenders out there who are working on making sure that we're able to finance these deals.
Yeah, I'll agree with you on that full fold, Devin. It's just a much more detailed discussion with the client to walk through the process from beginning to end. But if they listen and they do it carefully the right way, I've seen zero problems. But again, that's a discussion. If anybody would like to have a one-on-one about that, more than happy. And Amy, thank you for your insight this morning.
Yep, thanks for having me.
Linda, good morning and welcome. Brief overview, who you are, what you do, and question or statement for Devin. And thank you for bringing him to me as a guest and having him here on Clubhouse and on the Creative Birth Strategies podcast.
Good morning, everyone. Good morning, Joseph. Oh, it's my pleasure. About introducing you to Devin, he's amazing, and so is PadSplit. It's, I believe, really going to revolutionize a lot of landlord practices and increase opportunities for cash flow for landlords across the country. So my name is Linda Pliagas, and I'm the founder of Realty 411. We're a media company catering to real estate investors, and we produce magazines, events, and webinars, all in an effort to help real estate investors. And Devin and I hosted a webinar yesterday, as a matter of fact. We had some amazing questions pertaining to financing and insurance. And one of the questions that I wanted to ask but didn't get a chance to was, how do the landlords who are utilizing PadSplit and also the tenants who are residing in these properties, what are some of the ways that they handle safety and privacy issues?
Yeah, so the what we require on the individual rooms that is a little bit different than this is where something that might need to be added compared to just a traditional rental, right? Is we do require that the individual rooms have locking doors. So not just your traditional privacy lock, like those push button locks that can only be locked on the inside of the bedroom. Our bare minimum is you do need a keyed lock on the doors for the individual rooms. However, I always recommend to all the hosts that I work with to put in some sort of, either a smart lock or a mechanical code lock, just some sort of coded lock, so that way you don't have to rekey the lock every time there's a turnover or somebody loses their key. It kind of reduces the headache of having to show up at 2 in the morning when a tenant's lost their key. So that's where I recommend, or we always recommend a little bit. Spending an extra $10, $15 on a lock that has a code on it. But yeah, so that's one of the things that we do to help with privacy. And a lot of my hosts will say like, "Well, why do we need to do that? Isn't the privacy lock fine?" And I say, "No. Well, at the end of the day, these people do have to go to work, right? They're not. Sometimes when I say like, oh, this is an affordable housing solution, some people go to the idea that this is like we're trying to house homeless people, and that's not really what this is. These people are working people. They have income. They go to work. They go to their jobs. So they need to be able to lock their rooms and protect their belongings when they're gone, right? So that's why we require the locks. And as far as the privacy, right? So that's partially what we do to help with the privacy. But that's where a lot of our hosts, what I recommend is, when you do get a booking and you get the opportunity to ask them some questions, I always say like, have asked them if they've ever lived in a co-living environment before, because that's going to be a huge important part to making sure that they're going to be comfortable with this. I mean, a lot of our members have gone through the whole screening process and the application process and everything like that they go through on our website. And so they're going to be pretty familiar with the concept that they're going to have to like share a bathroom, right? Maybe they booked a private bathroom, so it's a little bit different, but they're still sharing a kitchen. They're still sharing some of the other common areas. So they just kind of need to know what to expect. And we have a huge playbook and a huge amount of resources to help hosts set their properties up for success, so that way they can kind of get ahead of any potential problems.
One thing I'd like to add, Devin, I mean, I feel like property management companies are welcoming this concept. Have you seen pushback in any specific markets or heard of the markets that you referenced, or have they been, I would say, welcoming with open arms this concept?
So what we find, and so like that's part of my role in Southern California, right? This is a newer market for us. We launched here, I want to say back in May. I'm born and raised in Southern California, but just to give you some context, right? We have Atlanta, where we've been operating since the beginning. We have lots of property managers that work with us. We've had whole property management companies that kind of grew up just catering to pad splits. So there's that angle of a more mature market that has almost every service you can need. There's companies that dedicate just to PadSplit. Then you have markets that are like launch markets, like LA and Charlotte, where they're newer, they're doing well. I believe we're just about at 200 units in Charlotte. We're about 100 units in LA, the Southern California region. But when I talk to property managers out here, and this is why I bring it up, is because it is newer concept to them. It really depends on the type of property management company. If they're traditionally managing long-term rentals, sometimes they're like, it sounds like a little bit more work than I want to put up with, right? But if I talk to a property management company that maybe is like an Airbnb co-host, right? We have some solid property management companies out here that have added essentially pad split divisions, and they're like, hey, this is a lot easier than managing an Airbnb, and it's simpler. You get less headaches. People are it's not managing turnovers after every weekend, and so they're open to it. One of our vendors out here that we work with, that is a property management company, she's doing super awesome in helping us manage pad splits. She doesn't work for us necessarily. She works for the hosts, right? Because we don't handle like physical property management. We just connect them with local vendors that can help them out with that. And she's loving it. She's like, this is great. I'm going all in on PadSplit because she sees the opportunity. And like I said, for her, this is a much simpler version of property management than what she was doing before. But she comes at it from that Airbnb short-term rental mindset of like, I got to keep like hospitality focused. And I think that has really helped her succeed because she tends to have less turnover. You know, her members stay for longer. They're happier. They get better reviews, better ratings because of the fact that she comes from that hospitality mindset. And so that's another reason why sometimes long-term rental property management companies aren't so they don't fit well with our model sometimes. Not to say they all don't, right? You know, it's really up to the individual property management company. But having that hospitality mindset is important. You don't have to go full Airbnb where you're taking care of every single thing for these people, but it is that blend of like that LTR versus that STR because we are in that middle ground there.
Excellent, Devin. And we're going to go now to the gentleman. Timothy, good morning and welcome. Great seeing you yesterday at my presentation with you guys up in the Lehigh Valley. A statement or question as well for Devin this morning from PadSplit.
Good morning, Joseph. Good morning, Joseph, and everyone. I'm going to apologize ahead of time. I have a little bit of weak signal for my internet, so if I do drift out, please just let me know. The only question I may have, Devin, kind of involves under, running background checks on some of these individuals. That would be my first concern. My second concern would be if I had to go through an eviction process with one of the folks that's there. I know each state has a different set of rules and regulations regarding residency and residency claims, and those who can claim squatters' rights. Does PadSplit offer something there, or have you ever run into anything? And it's a great concept, don't get me wrong, but do you have you had any experiences with that in the past?
Yeah, so to answer the first question, well, let me do this. Let me give a quick answer in a second, and I'll circle back to it, but then I'll answer the first question. So our eviction rate on the platform is 1.2%, right, which is lower than most rental strategies, I would say. But back to the background check question. So when, there's a couple services that we provide as being a marketplace. We advertise the property, the listing, right, but then we also do member screening. So we do a background check, income verification, credit check on all the members before we even are allowed to book a room. And we also allow all of our hosts to do the additional screening they want. So you can set your listing up to be the default where somebody can book the room if it's available and they qualify based on our pre-qualification, or you can do what's called booking approvals where somebody has to request to book the room and then you get 24 hours to decline the booking for any reason. There's no penalty for declining. So during that 24 hours, we always tell hosts they can do additional screening, they can ask additional questions, they can request additional documents, whatever makes them feel comfortable. Because at the end of the day, we don't force anybody into the property we're not trying to make them feel uncomfortable by just saying like, here's this person that has to move in, you have to take them, right? If you're not getting a good vibe and it's not going to fit the culture of the house, you feel free to decline, right? So that's kind of how we handle background checks. So we do a basic, background check, and then we allow hosts to do anything additional that they would like. Now back to the eviction. So our whole methodology when it comes to eviction is about prevention, right? Obviously, that's the worst case scenario for everyone. But what we do is we have a lot of mitigation strategies, and I'll kind of jump into that. But at the end of the day, like I get this question a lot, especially in a tenant-friendly state like California, which is where I live. If you're investing in real estate, you always take this chance that there's a potential eviction, right? There's always going to be, that's why it's an investment, right? There's always risk. It's just how much risk you're comfortable with. So if you're super worried about like an eviction or something like that, I would say, if you can, invest in a super landlord friendly state, right? That's going to help you with that. But at the end of the day, our model does help with this. And what we do is, when it comes to the risk mitigation, it's the same thing as the vacancy risk mitigation. If you have a 6-bedroom house with 6 individual streams of income, if one person stops paying and starts squatting, you still have 5 streams of income. Versus if you have a 4-bedroom house, kind of like in the example I've used previously, and the family stops paying, now you're out 100% of that income. Right, so that's where that risk mitigation is helped there. But then also, what we do is we have a support team that is constantly trying to reach out to the member to get them to pay, and then also they do get banned from our platform for life if they do go through an eviction in a PadSplit. So that's kind of like a social credit thing that we have, and especially in our markets like Atlanta, like that's one of the only ways you're going to find a room for rent in Atlanta is through PadSplit. So, if you're banned from there, you're going to lock yourself out of a lot of opportunities. But because the rooms are furnished and utilities included, what we find is that if somebody loses their job or something like that and they can't pay, they'll communicate that with the host, or maybe they just leave, right? And like, yes, obviously nobody likes the turnover there, but at the end of the day, that's the best case scenario, right? Rather than somebody squatting or something like that. So because they don't have to really fully move out, right? They're not bringing out their bed, they're not taking all this furniture with them. They're really just taking their luggage, their clothing, maybe a couple personal items, that type of stuff. It's easy for them to just leave. And so, we've had countless examples where the host says, okay, well, you can just leave then. And then they do. And it's at the end of the day, like, people kind of jump to that eviction. Like, every person who ever struggles with making a payment is going to just fight to the end and go through an eviction. I've actually seen the opposite. A lot of times people will say like, hey, I lost my job. Like, I'm going to go move back in with my mom or something like that. Or maybe the host works with them and say, hey, like, let's get you on a payment plan or something like that. And that helps, keep that room occupied, maybe at a reduced rate or something like that, at least in the short term. But in the times where they actually do get to an eviction, you still have to go through the standard processes, right? And we usually refer the host to like a local eviction service and things like that. And that's how we handle that. We always tell our hosts, and one of my favorite things is like, do your due diligence, because we don't want, I can't give legal advice and things like that when it comes to the local municipalities, but there's a lot of resources that we provide to help prevent the eviction at the end of the day.
Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Devin. We'll keep moving this along. Felix, good morning and welcome. Brief overview, who you are, what you do. Question or statement for Devin this morning from PadSplit. Felix, going once. Felix going twice. We'll come back to Felix. Stephen, good morning and welcome. Brief overview, who you are. Oh, Felix, you there?
There I go. I couldn't get this daggone button.
It's all good. Brief overview, who you are, what you do, and questions for Devin from PadSplit.
Felix Buchanan Sr., Buchanan Biz Enterprises, the JLix Group. I'm a team leader of the Keller Williams team. I'm very familiar with PadSplit. A good friend of mine's, Beth Silverman, has been doing it in Florida for years. I've been involved with rentals and such for years as well. I don't necessarily have any questions, maybe a statement or two. I do feel as though that it is a platform that's good, but it's only good for certain states. As you mentioned, I did follow it from it being incepted in Atlanta, of course, California. I just think in certain states it will work tremendously, as well as that in other states it's just not going to be as favorable because, give an example, a state like Maryland, we don't have an issue with renting properties at all, as well as boarding houses here and a couple of the East Coast states. It's very easy to put tenants in and, rent rooms, whether it's to college students or things of that nature. I just think it's more set up for like a state like California. It's excellent. Atlanta, it's excellent. North Carolina, it's excellent. I just don't believe that it's great in every state.
Thank you, Felix. Devin, thoughts? Go ahead, Devin.
Yeah, I was just gonna say, I don't want to be contrarian there, Felix. But I do say, so we are active in Baltimore, and it's actually been a really good market for us. We have 495 active rooms as of this morning in Baltimore, with 85% occupancy. And so, maybe this was my mistake when I was talking about it earlier, is that we we're not only in the business of solving, occupancy issues when it comes to rentals, right? So when somebody has a property that they're looking to fill, and maybe it's not filling traditionally, that's not the only thing we do, right? Some people are just saying, hey, I can't make that cash flow without doing something different, right? And so that's another solution that we're solving for investors. So it's like, hey, how do I acquire an asset in today's real estate market with all the challenges and make it cash flow? And plenty of other solutions exist, right? At the end of the day, for sure. But we are seeing success in Maryland, and I do agree with you though. There's plenty of markets where it's a little bit tougher, a little bit easier, and it really just comes down to like what your risk tolerance is, what your purchase, what you're looking to acquire at, and because like I've had some investors in California that are like, hey, I really want to do this, but like in California, for instance, you need to come, a decent PadSplit properties might cost you $1 million just, and that's not even like a high end property, right? So then I say, okay, well, let's look in Dallas. Maybe you can buy 2 or 3 of these for that same capital outlay, and now the risk is a little bit diversified, things like that. So each individual investor has their own goals, but we are operating in Maryland. It's doing well. But like I said, it's not the overall solution for everything, for sure.
Understood. Thanks.
Thanks, Felix. Stephen, good morning and welcome. Brief overview, who you are, what you do, and a statement or question for Devin with PadSplit this morning.
Yep. Thank you, guys. Thank you, Joe. This is Steve with REI Homepage. I'm a broker, investor, and I'm actually looking at affordable living options up here in northeastern PA and a few other markets. And a couple questions on the PadSplit model. First of all, you talk about the cities you're in. If I wanted to bring a town that you're not in onto a platform, is there any objection to that? And then the second real quick question, I know we're out of time, is on the municipality side. Around here, door locks on individual doors. I do transitional housing to a small extent. Code officers kind of react negatively to that. They see that as a safety issue. So that's one thing. And the second thing is, since you're in a 31-day plus model, I assume from a rental registration standpoint, we just do a rental, typically, we don't know every town, we would do a typical rental registration because it's not a less than 30-day rental. For northeastern Pennsylvania, if you're renting for less than 30 days, you're basically hotel model or Airbnb, which is unpermitted. So really my questions come into how do your rental registrations have to happen? The door lock thing, which I think is a requirement, might trip up some code officers. And then the final question is, do you have areas where you say, well, we're not there yet, so we don't want to bring your town on board?
This is going to be an extended call real quick, though, everybody. We're going to stay the extra time to make sure everybody's addressed. Go ahead, Devin.
Yeah, so when it comes to, I'll answer the first question about the markets. So we do have our core markets, right? And really the biggest difference is, so we talked about like what the services we do, right? We do advertising. We advertise not only on our website, but 60 plus other partner websites, as well as like Google SEO, social media ads, to try to attract these members to the listings. Then we do the screening, and then we handle the member management once they're in the platform, in the property. Like I said, no physical property management though. We're more in the people management business. But so the biggest difference about like between a core market and like what we consider an emerging market on our platform is that we don't advertise as heavily in an emerging market. So the member acquisition is a little bit more host driven. They might have to post their listing on Craigslist or Facebook Marketplace a little bit more, right? Things like that to drive that traffic to their listing. And we still do the screening and the payment collection and all that other stuff, but we don't advertise as heavily. So we have plenty of markets that people have just put PadSplits on, and if they're willing to kind of understand that they might have to drive that member acquisition a little bit more, then that's okay, right? So like Cleveland, it's not a core market for us, but we have 27 rooms in Cleveland right now, right, with 92% occupancy. And so some of those bookings have probably come from us, but majority of them are going to come from the actual hosts themselves. And so we definitely have a lot of hosts in our markets that say, hey, I really like this idea. I like this concept. I want to bring it to Columbus, Ohio. We have 30 rooms in Columbus. It's an emerging market, 96% average occupancy. And so what they do is they say, hey, I'm going to bring enough units on board to make you guys notice this area, and we're going to launch this pretty much myself. I know for sure, I was just having a conversation this week with somebody in Cleveland, and they were saying, oh yes, a host referred me that is operating 24 of those 27 rooms in Cleveland, and he's very much gung ho on the model. He wants to acquire more and more of these, and hopefully bring this to be a core market eventually. And Cleveland is definitely on the roadmap for sure. And then the second part of your question, as far as code enforcement, yes, you totally answered what I would say normally is that we don't know every town, right? So that's why we do recommend doing your due diligence when it comes to the local rules and regulations. And so, yeah, if there's a rule about locking the rooms, maybe that's not the best market for us, right? But we do have a lot of workaround things that we can talk about, and that's where I would take the discussion offline. If you want to reach out to me, feel free to reach out to me. I think Joe, you're going to post my information somewhere, right?
Absolutely.
Yeah, so you can feel free to reach out to me, and then we'll have that discussion as far as the individual rules for individual markets. But you'd be surprised on how what we offer a lot of support when it comes to that, right? Like in Atlanta, we actually got a lot of pushback when we first started doing this. And we've litigated a lot of cases over, our co-living model. And now Atlanta's a little bit more friendly to the model, right? Because they realize that, if they were to ban us or something in Atlanta, they would be kicking out, 8,200 people from affordable housing units. And so that's a really bad position for a city government to be in versus like Airbnbs, those Airbnbs are getting banned all the time all across the country because of the fact that takes, in the eyes of the government, takes housing away from the local people versus we're providing housing. So we've actually, the city of Portland actually invited us to come in. And so they might still have some regulations that kind of conflict with our model, but I wouldn't be surprised if they start changing those based on how successful we are in the market. And they say, okay, well, we really want PadSplit to be here. We'll tweak some things, right? And that's obviously going to be, different governments are going to have different feelings towards us. But we have seen a lot more friendliness from city governments for sure.
And one last question, because I think Amy brought it up front, is like with Airbnb, 65% occupancy is kind of what you need to be break even or stay in the game. Do you guys have a percent occupancy that says, okay, I better be 2/3 rented, 3 of my 5 bedrooms have to be rented for this to make sense? Have you got any kind of statistics that point in that direction?
Well, when we underwrite deals, and I help people underwrite deals, we our rule of thumb is 10 to 15% vacancy is what you kind of want to bake into your numbers. And I have a spreadsheet that I can provide to people where they can plug in all the purchase price, everything, estimated rents, all that type of stuff, and it'll calculate what your cash flow is, cash on cash return, all that type of stuff. But that's I think our platform wide occupancy right now is hovering right around that 85 to 87%. But a lot of our hosts are sitting at 100% occupancy, right? I always tell people on a market wide basis, we're always trying to maintain that roughly 85 to 90% occupancy, because it wouldn't make sense to advertise if we were 100% occupied, right? We spend about $1 million a month on marketing for our active listings, and if we have no inventory, then that's all getting wasted. But it's not because we hold people back from occupancy. We just try to bring on more supply to balance the market, or if it gets too low, we try to boost marketing dollars to increase the demand. But to answer your question, it's really situation specific, right? There's going to be some properties where they have 9 bedrooms and once they get 3 occupied, now they're break even, or you're going to have some properties where it's 7 bedrooms and 6 is a break even. Maybe that's not a good investment though, right? So it really just depends on the individual property for sure.
Thank you, Steve. Thank you, Devin. Thank you. Brian, good morning and welcome. Brief overview, who you are, what you do, and thoughts to our discussion this morning, interviewing with Devin at PadSplit.
Thanks, Joe. Thanks, Devin. My name is Brian Guth. I'm an investor in upstate New York. I actually have a couple co-living properties currently, and I was curious from a stats perspective and kind of what you're seeing from your member kind of profile. I was curious the breakdown between maybe college students looking for a place for a semester versus traveling nurses versus other traveling professionals versus maybe someone who just needs it's a local who just needs local affordable housing for a period of time.
Yeah, so I would say the majority of our member demographic is going to fall into the latter category there, Uh, that is a common thing I hear. You know, I do a lot of presentations about PadSplit, a lot of informational seminars, things like that. And one of the biggest things people will say is like, "Oh, I should put this by a college, right?" And actually, you find that most people on the platform are not college students because a lot of times college students, if they're going to do a co-living model, which when I was in college, I did, they get a couple friends together, they sign a lease for a house or for an apartment, and then they split it up themselves, right? It's very frequently that college students are going to want to do this with random people, you know, or they have dorm options. There's a lot of housing options when it comes to college students, so that make it very different than what we are offering. Our average age on the platform currently is about 34 years old, and people ask me all the time. They're like, "What is the makeup of these members, right? What do they do?" And it really is just a complete mixed bag, right? So it's all over the place as far as like you have Uber drivers, FedEx drivers, waitresses, baristas, bartenders, all the people in our society that kind of help drive the community, support everybody else in their the services and things like that. But maybe they just want to be able to, and they can't afford to live in the community that they serve. That's the type of people that usually end up on PadSplit. But you also get like the traveling nurses, right? Things like that. What I tend to see, and every demographic and every market's going to be a little bit different. But what I see is usually like people that are on short-term contracts. Usually, PadSplit doesn't make the most sense because they do have to commit to that 12 weeks. So like if somebody's like here for 6 weeks, it probably doesn't make the most sense to do PadSplit. They might do like a more of a Airbnb or something like that. But you do get all sorts of people, but usually the core demographic is local people who live and work in the area.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you, Devin.
Thanks for the info.
Excellent, Brian. Thank you. And last but not least, Drew, good morning and welcome. Brief overview, who you are, what you do, and question or statement for Devin at PadSplit.
Absolutely. Good morning. Good morning, Joe. Good morning, everybody. It's been a phenomenal Sunday, and I hope everybody's feeling fantastic today. It's great to be here. Devin, it's really good to meet you, man. I've been really diving into the co-living space over the last 120 days or so. Just came across my brow earlier this year, and I just put a little time into it. I think it's a phenomenal. I mean, I was all into affordable housing at American Development Group, which is my company for development in Chicago. I'm in Chicago, based in Chicago, and I was told that the PadSplit model Chicago wasn't really an attractive market because of the tenant-friendly ordinances here. We have a lot of very aggressive tenant-friendly stuff. So once you get somebody gets in here, gets in your property, it's hard to get them out, right? So a couple things I wanted to address with you and ask you questions on.
Keep it brief, though, Drew. Okay, a couple questions. We have a timeline. Okay.
Say again.
We have a timeline, so keep it direct. Okay.
Oh, no problem, Joe. I mean, I can do it private. I was just trying to get to the meat of the matter in a couple of complex questions. It's a compound question for you, Devin. One, do you have a handle on the HUD because of the rent-friendly processes? HUD, I understand, now qualifies this as a viable thing that they'll pay for the rooms. It's sometime this year it's supposed to have passed. Is that true? And what do you know about that? And also, I guess I'll reach out to you for a better time when you have more time to go into elaborate a little bit more on what markets are good and is Chicago good for you? I think it's a mix of messages, but places like that are rent friendly, I've heard it's really not a good place. So for co-living, what do you think?
Yeah, short answer, it really just depends on your risk profile. We have 11 active rooms currently in the city of Chicago. So it's not a core market yet, but it's definitely on the roadmap. But people said the same thing about LA, and we're growing like weed out here. So it really just depends on your risk profile, right? Like as much as we say, well, it's a tenant friendly state or it's a tenant friendly city. Yeah, there's still plenty of apartments and buildings and rental units in those markets, right? It's just people don't know how to manage those. if you're a first-time investor, would I say, hey, go buy a rental property in LA? Probably not, right? You probably need some experience, and you probably need to know how to manage the tenant rules and all that stuff, or at least work with a property manager. Same thing probably about Chicago. I just always say do your due diligence, but Chicago is definitely on our roadmap, so I don't think it's going to be a city that that fear will kind of keep people out of it.
Got it. Thanks for that, Devin. And Joe, is that Devin's number in the chat?
Yes, it is.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Devin, real quick, top 5 markets that you think are going to really prosper Q1 from Q4 to Q1 with PadSplit that nobody sees coming. What do you think?
Top 5 markets, I'd say Phoenix, Dallas, Denver. We just launched. I think it's going to do really good. And Charlotte continues to do well. And then let me see, what was the last one? I'd probably say Tampa. Tampa, I think, was doing really well for us as well.
That's great stuff. Amy, some final thoughts and statement with Devin from PadSplit.
Yeah, thanks so much for coming on today. It's always great to have. I mean, you're a platform, but you're really a technology company solving a problem. I will say the U.S. PropTech Council has announced, or we just recently announced our affordable housing initiative, and love to have PadSplit be a part of the conversation. It's a cohort of HUD, some of the largest affordable multifamily, and then also working with National Multifamily Housing Council and the National Association of Home Builders. So it's really about how can technology solve this housing affordability crisis. And it's not just it's technology, it's policy, it's supply chain, but how can we do this from a technology perspective? So I'd love to have PadSplit a part of the conversation. Thank you so much for coming. I would say that, if we look forward as we go, technology really does solve a lot of challenges, and it's great to see how y'all are applying it. So thanks for coming. For sure.
Awesome. Thank you. And real quick, one thing I do want to address kind of to that point is I always tell people you can do co-living on your own. And we are not trying to say you cannot do this by yourself. And one of the things that I've noticed in the past is that people who are doing co-living or trying to do co-living by themselves without the technology platform, sometimes the tenant side of things, people are scared, right? They're like, I don't want to sign a 12-month lease with some random person from Craigslist. I just helped a host in Phoenix the other day. He had a 3-bedroom property. He was trying to rent out room by room, and he just couldn't get. He was like, I don't believe that you guys are going to be able to fill these rooms at these rates because I've been advertising them for 6 months and I can't fill them. He added the property. Within 2 weeks, he got 100% occupancy at the rates he was looking for. And he goes, wow, okay. What is the secret sauce here? And it's because we offer them flexibility a little bit. The tech platform gives them a little bit of a surety that it has a brand name to it versus renting. It's just like Airbnb, right? Renting a random second home from some stranger might be a little bit tougher, but going through Airbnb kind of gives them a little bit more of a guaranteed feeling. So yeah, definitely the technology factor and tech platform I think are huge and why we've been successful.
Amy, thank you. And Devin, I want to thank you for coming on today. This was, we put it together really quickly, and I appreciate the follow-up. I appreciate Linda making the introduction. Love to have you out here on the East Coast. If we could convince one of your complimentary associates here to not be camera shy, I could try to get them at one of my events coming up here in the Northeast. Maybe you could help me out with that with a little nudging. So I'd appreciate that.
Oh yeah, and I'm happy to fly out. It might be closer to December just because I am expecting my 4th baby at the end of this month. But definitely happy to come out and visit everybody for sure.
Yeah, I would say if you could see if your second Saturday is available in December, that would be a point of reference. That's when we have a beautiful event in Philadelphia, Second Chestnut, on a rooftop deck. It facilitates over 100 people in the room, but I could obviously get a bigger room if the registration goes higher, which I would think it would. So if that's something you want to eyeball out, it would be a morning event. We get you in, and then you can fly back out later in the day. That would be fantastic because I think this interview is going to get a lot of viewership on the podcast itself. We're going to get it pushed out for you as well. Your contact information is in the chat. The replays are on as well, which we will then push out as well again. I want to thank our moderators. I want to thank everybody, the engaged audience. I want to thank everybody coming in here on Sunday morning at 9 a.m. We're here every Sunday tackling subject matter that I really feel will impact your real estate, scaling your services, whatever place that you come to into this industry. We're trying to facilitate that. And Devin, I want to thank you again for coming on this morning.
Yep. Thanks, Joe. Appreciate you having me. Look forward to working with everybody. Feel free to reach out.
Yeah, I'll reach out to an email with the dates and the location and everything. So, and congratulations on the fourth child. I want to thank everybody for being here on the Creative Birth Strategies podcast and the house here on Clubhouse, allowing us to host this event every Sunday morning. I want to thank our sponsors, Linda Pelagas from Realty 411, Yardell Perkins of Perkatech, MB Capital Solutions, where I'm a referral partner for the last decade. Real Estate Mastermind Strategies, climbing up through various states such as Maryland, New York, New Jersey, Pennsylvania, Connecticut, Delaware. We're growing. We have 3 events or 4 events this week. We're in South Jersey. We're in Delaware. We're in Lehigh Valley. We're in Philadelphia with great subject matter, great speakers, providing all that insight. And there'll be a big announcement to where I'll be moving to my operations as regional director for lending, offering white label referral partnership program as well as direct to investor. Pricing it in the DSCR space is starting at 5.25, and on the bridge lending space we are starting at 8.99. We are extremely aggressive. I'm also very aggressive in recruiting brokers, people that would like to white label our product, and people that would like to set up a referral partnership marketing program that we have for real estate agents, real estate professionals throughout the country. Please reach out to me. This will be reposted, replayed everywhere, but it'll be downloaded into Buzzsprout almost immediately. But again, Devin, thank you. Everybody have a beautiful Sunday morning. And my quote this morning, which we always try to end up with a quote, and try to get that in front of me as well. It's from Mr. Anthony Robbins, Tony Robbins. Surmounting difficulty is the crucible that forms character. Thank you, everyone. Be well, be blessed. We'll see you next Sunday, 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time for another great subject matter of real estate creative birth strategies. Have a great day, and I'll be ending the room in the next 30 seconds.